Hey everybody, it's Stacey with Bridges 52.7. Wanted to give a discussion about snake eyes. So, just kind of off the cuff, here we go. The movie had a ton of just great insights into humanity and into the human story. And I would say not just humanity, but like the human story according to the Bible, even though it's not a Christian movie. The How can you tell a good story that doesn't take away from Christian themes? You can't out tell God's story, first off. But there really was just some amazing there were some amazing connections here and illustrations that I think are really powerful. So let's dive into a few of those things. The basic story: his dad was murdered kind of in front of him as a child, and the rest of his life is motivated by trying to understand a couple things. One, his origin story. His dad's a ghost. He thought he knew who his dad was, starts trying to do some research, and his dad has no documentation. The name's a fake. Like, he has no idea. So I talked previously in a video about origin stories and why they matter and how they can drive us to understand, like, they're basically evangelism tools for us to start understanding like where we came from biblically and what's our origin story in the Bible, what was our purpose and why were we created. But all of these stories, like all of his life is motivated by that childhood trauma and understanding who he is and getting vengeance on the people who did it. So his origin story is kind of the driving force of his life, right? So he's trying to find out who his dad was. He's also trying to get revenge on the guy who did it. The driving, I would say, idea of this movie is that any impurity in your heart is a weakness. It's an open door for the enemy to exploit. It's a weakness in an open door he can come in, a weakness to exploit. So, and we see that played out in different ways. But that is a huge foundational truth, I would say, of the Christian faith too, which is why David says, like, search me and know my heart, try me and see if there's any offensive way in me. Like, he is very committed to keeping his heart clean because we don't know our own motives. We lie to ourselves all the time, and because the enemy gets an open door, not just because, I mean, a huge part of it is we want to be right with the Lord, but we also, really can miss sometimes the open door we give the enemy anytime our heart is not okay. Anytime there's sin or weakness in it, it is an open door for the enemy. And it really gives him a legal right to be there. So more on that in a minute. But he makes some decisions that were very compromising because of that driving need. Some people came to him and said, we've got information on your dad, but you have to work for us. And so he agrees to do it, not really knowing who they are, what kind of people they are. It didn't matter to him because he just wanted information on his dad. So he got this, they had an open door into him and exploited it. And he ends up betraying somebody who was like a brother to him and had taken him in. He was basically the heir to this kingdom and invites Snake Eyes in, treats him like a brother, gives him the keys of the kingdom, and starts training him up in the ways of the family. And it's very interesting because in some ways that's very much a Jesus analogy, right? Where he's the son of the king, he adopts us in, trains us in ways of the kingdom. So there's some interesting parallels there. However, at the end of the day, when it plays out, it's a little more like the prodigal son story, where Snake Eyes betrays them all, but then repents and comes back and is restored. But the brother acts like the older brother in the parable of the prodigal son, who gets bitter. He does not get the respect that he felt he was due, and he gets offended, and then he ends up leaving and getting kind of going out against the family at that point because he's so bitter. So both of them, what is it, the Bible, is it 1 Corinthians 10:12, 2 Corinthians 10, right around in there, it talks about, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. And I think that really plays out where he felt so confident in his own righteousness because I'm part of the family and I'm entitled to this, and totally missed the impurity in his own heart and the open door that was in his life. So you've kind of got this prodigal son thing. You've got, all these different kind of ways to connect it to the Bible that just keep coming to me as I'm processing this. So let's see. Snake Eyes had lost his family, but then he kind of gained a family, when his dad was murdered. But then really it was all restored to him, but then he lost it all again because he was still so motivated by that childhood incident and was willing to betray all the things that were given back to him because he still needed answers. And there's a scene, well, and then I'll come back to the last scene because I want to end on that note. The irony of it is that when he was helping, and I'm sorry, spoilers and all of that, but when he was helping this organization, he didn't know who they were, but he's doing it to get information from his dad about his dad. What he found out afterwards was that the very people he was trying to find a man, but what he didn't understand was that man that killed his dad worked for an organization. They gave him the man, but in order to get the man, he ended up helping the organization that hired him and paid him and required him to do that all along. So the irony of it is, the very thing he was trying to get vengeance on, because he took it into his own hands instead of trusting the Lord, he ended up supporting the very enemy he was trying to destroy all along. He had been working for them and he didn't even know it. And I just think that's how bitterness in our life works, and just sin of all kinds, any impurity in our heart that we hang on to, even especially bitterness, because then or vengeance, where we're trying to go get against, we want to see justice play out. We're not trusting the Lord to do that. We end up ultimately, the thing we want vengeance against, the sin we want to hurt, is the very thing we end up fueling and helping along the way. And that's like a horrifying realization. Anyways, so he ends up, when he finally let go, repented, joined the family again, helped them, he relinquished his quest for answers and justice. And in that, he ended up getting eventually all the answers that he was really looking for, and way better than what he had gotten a man before, but no answers. Now he was getting all the actual answers he needed. So the Bible says, if you lay down your life, you will find it. But if you're trying to hold on to your life, you're going to lose it. And so again, another just scriptural principle that was playing out 100% in this movie. And the last thing is, there's a scene where he has to take a test, and he's dropped down into a pit, and there are these magical, larger than life snakes in there, and like bigger than him, huge snakes. And the deal was, it's a test. If your heart is pure, the snakes have no authority to touch you. But if there's any impurity in your heart, they will kill you. And somebody saved his butt the first time, and then he goes in there a second time with a pure heart. But I loved that analogy, because you see, the snake was a lie. Satan is a liar, right? And he tells us all day long that he has authority over us. He has no authority but what we give him. And our sin gives him access to our life. It gives him a legal right to be in our heart, in our minds, in our thoughts, to come against our life. But we're supposed to be standing with Jesus on earth as it is in heaven. There's no sin in heaven. We're supposed to be in victory with him. And we're supposed to know that the enemy has no authority over us. And so we don't listen to his lies. But when our heart is impure, he has a right. We give him access to us. So again, back to the original, the whole driving theme of this movie is that any impurity in your heart is basically an open door. It's a weakness that the enemy can exploit. And so we see that playing out in multiple ways. But the snake imagery, that scene was just a powerful, very powerful illustration of the kind of our interaction with the enemy, that when our heart is pure, he cannot come near us. So anyways, I hope this helps. I hope this gives you a chance to kind of either see this with fresh eyes for yourself, or maybe even as you're talking about it with someone else, have some ways to help start connecting things back to the Bible and to Christian truths. So thanks.